Hello and welcome. My name is Marc Blatstein, and this YouTube is going to be on the first step back and how, with work, it can contribute to early release from the Federal Bureau of Prisons. I am the physician founder of Physician Pre-Sentence Report Service, and about 20 years ago, I too was convicted of a felony. I still have felony on my record, and I was able, though, with the support of colleagues, to be able to get my license to practice back in 2010. And even though I have it back, I've chosen to change careers and tradition into working with those of you who are like me, were challenged by the criminal justice system. And my goal here is to have, or at least to share with all of you, so what I've learned so that you will be prepared while I was not. And so let's get to it if we can. And so preparation is the most important concept here that I'm going to try and pass on. And really, the aspect of prison becomes real. You're in sentencing, the sentence is passed, and if you're remanded, as soon as they take you out of the courtroom, even though you're not in the BOP, it becomes real right then and there. If you're self-surrendering, it'll become real rather, when you self-surrender to the prison and your loved ones drop you off or friends drop you off and they leave. And all of a sudden you find yourself in an unusual surrounding, unfamiliar surrounding, and each are different. It can be a freestanding camp, which has a limited fencing. It can be a minimum satellite camp, which is attached to a higher security camp where there could be guard towers with razor wire, guards with guns at the top, long guns. You can see buses coming in with prisoners that are shackled. And then at the camp, they will have razor wire around it. So each place is different, but that's when it can become real. And when you then surrender, it'd be nice to be given a heads up, but you may wind up in an isolation cell. I know that I wasn't told that. And, post-COVID, it could be that you go into an isolation cell, and it could be, depends on the facility. Could be because of you. It couldn't be not because of you. It just could be because of that there's influenza in the facility, or just because. But either way, not knowing it, because I didn't know it, I thought this was the end of the earth. And so it's not unusual to then be placed in an isolation cell for a period of time. There may be other individuals in there with you. And so know that they too are going to be anxious at the same time. If I participated with your legal team or with you before your pre-sentence interview, then you'll be aware of this. In addition, several days before, or a couple of days before you surrendered, or before your sentencing hearing, you will have you'll have books starting to be sent into you, so it'll help take the edge off. Otherwise, being locked in a cell 23 hours a day is going to make the most normal person nuts. And if you're claustrophobic, it's really going to have a negative effect on you. And so this is why, I stress preparation, and in all of its variations. Stakeholders, these are going to be the individuals, which I've touched on in other YouTubes and through the website, that are going to be responsible for your future, for making sure that they see incremental improvements in you reducing your criminogenic needs over time. And so the biggest thing that you have going for you since 2018 is the passing of the First Step Act. Now, there's positive and negatives to it, as we've all read in the press, where it's been going back and forth through Congress that there's 10 credits and then there's 15 credits per month. And when are they going to consider the first assessment the first assessment? That, I can't comment here on today, but there are and I will touch on program statements that dictate the law as to when the first assessment is. But what I can say is that you can get up to a year's worth of credits off your sentence. And how that breaks down from a satellite view, or approximately, it could take a year to get 6 months off your sentence. But if you add into that, you can also get earned time credits, which is 15% off. You can also get unbeknownst to you, but should all of the work that you're doing on your behalf be noticed, which should be, by your case managers and unit team, which are also stakeholders, they then, if they see that you're making an effort, they too can make an effort and choose to give you the benefits of the Second Chance Act, which we can go over it a little bit later. And so the pre-sentence report now begins to take shape. And you should be aware by this point, if you're listening to this YouTube, and depending how far you've come through the process today, but the pre-sentence report is also known as the inmate's Bible. And you've been preparing for this ever since you've come through the guilty either trial or guilty hearing where you've pled guilty. And so this has been prepared for by you and your attorney in preparation for your pre-sentence interview. And so in preparation for your pre-sentence interview, you have a couple things that you've had to do. One is you've had to prepare copies of all of your biographical and identification material, meaning you need copies of everything, your medical records, your personal identification records, your educational records, your Social Security card, driver's license, identification card if you have a passport, all of that information. If you have a large medical history, that needs to all be prepared before your pre-sentence interview. Including if you have surgery reports, all of them. If you have pathology reports, all of them. If you have diagnostic tests, you should have them, both the reports, quite frankly, you get them on CD or flash drive. Because a lot of the times the actual film, which is now on a CD or flash drive, means a whole lot more than the written report. In addition to all of that, you should also have written your own personal narrative. And why is that? Because right now, the narrative that's been written, that has been written and is all through the press about you to date, has been dispensed by the Department of Justice as your indictment. And it probably is not that very flattering of you. And so the narrative is your story. So the Department of Justice's indictment of you is your story, their story of you. And so while it seems as a daunting task, let me back up and say that it's kind of like, Tesla has their car, their commercials, that's their story, their narrative of their car. Nike has their shoes. That's their story or their narrative of their shoe brand. And so you need to begin to draft your narrative. And it could take several months of writing and rewriting from, your childhood to the present, and where what brought you to this point in your life that caused you to break the law, so to speak. Now, I have separate YouTubes, and you can go to my website for more information on that. But, ultimately it gets distilled down to where it explains that you take responsibility, you have remorse for your actions, and you understand the victim's pain. You also need to have the reentry and release plan. And you need to address that, because for sure, when you go in for your sentencing hearing, the judge is going to want to know your plan. He or she is going to want to know that they don't want to see you back in that courtroom again. And trust me, I know this, because I had a very good lawyer, I thought, and the lawyer used to be a prosecutor, and we both stood there at the same time when the judge said he didn't want to see me back in the courtroom again. And then we had discussed appealing the indictment. Now, I didn't know whether that I was a deer in headlights. I was not a very good and compliant client, but we asked if we could appeal the indictment. The judge said, sure. But what happened is that, I went in to, I got sentenced, went into a camp and came back out, and they appealed the indictment, and the judge hit the hammer on the desk and sent me back again. And so listen to what the judge says. If they tell you they don't want to see you back again, they mean it. And so you need to have this reentry plan well written out. And again, you can go into my website, but those are separate YouTubes that I dedicate just to the release plan. And last, there are what's called a Spark 13 assessment survey. And before you can take the First Step Act has programs that address criminogenic needs. And you take these programs in order to you take the programs, and as you complete these programs, these credits are applied monthly. And as they add up, they become days that you can take off your sentence. But in order to have the credits count, you need to be able to, one, have taken the survey, which you should take within the first 30 days of after you surrender or you've been remanded to prison and you show up there. And second, even though you need to have the class recommended to you before you take the program. If it's not recommended and you take the program, that's great, but you may not get credit for it. And so all of that becomes important because as you get to your pre-sentence interview, your attorney will now take those three separate documents, your personal narrative, your reentry or release plan. And as you have read, you can see these questions that are available for the Spark 13 assessment questions through my website, and you can also get them online, that they can then weave them into the probation officer will have all of your information several weeks before you meet, so they can weave all of that information into their probation report so that when you finally meet for your interview, the probation officer is now not under the gun to spend all the time answering questions. They can sit down with you and have a conversation. And that will get to give them time to know you better so that they can, when they draft the official pre-sentence report, when they finally pass that to the judge, they can also pass on the recommendation for a sentence and placement. But if there's no narrative, then once you get to prison, all that the case manager, which is going to be another stakeholder, and the unit team, which is another, part of the stakeholders, all they're going to see is the Department of Justice's indictment. And so, it's not a great way to make a great first impression when you get to prison. And so I strongly suggest that you pay attention to, drafting the narrative, which is going to take every inch of, 3 months. And if you have longer, that's better. And if you have someone that is not an enabler that can write that with you, because it's going to take multiple drafts until it comes out to be, a narrative that will work in your favor and a reentry plan that'll work in your favor, then that's when it gets passed to the, you don't want it to get passed to the probation officer before it is something that will help you and not hinder you. Then when you get into prison, if you are then put in this reference, you get into an isolation cell. Well, if you have books finally that are sent to you, it takes the edge off you being isolated for 23 hours a day. You then get taken over to either the low or the camp. You'll be given a place to sleep. You'll be given a bunk, a job. You'll meet with your case manager unit team, and there's certain things that I will recommend for you to do. One is to request to take your assessment survey questions. Pattern, there's a Spark 13 assessment survey. There's also the pattern score. And the pattern score is mostly hard-coded. You'll be able to see that online. I may be able to pull that up at the end of this if I remember to do that. But the categories are, again, they're mostly hard-coded, meaning that it's your age. Your age is going to be what it is. It's going to be your criminal history score, which comes from your charge. And you'll know your history. Your attorney is going to know all of this. Your escape history, if you haven't gone to jail, there's not going to be a history. Your education, you're going to know your education. You need to have all that information into your attorney before your pre-sentence interview. Otherwise, if you don't, and you're a lawyer or a doctor or a physicist, and you don't do that, they're just going to consider once you get into the prison that you don't have your GED, period. Your detainer, if there are any, you need to get that all fixed before you get into your interview. Otherwise, it could be a problem affecting how you get released. And so there are other, parts of it, but these are fixed numbers. And so there's not much you can do about them, but if you're someone who's never been into the prison system before. Now we get into, so you're beginning to take the First Step Act programs, and your case manager has offered you a program. So let's say, for example, that you are taking a program, and the program is, you're a stockbroker, you're a banker, you're a hedge fund guy, and the program is going to be how to balance your checkbook. Don't roll your eyes. You're going to thank the case manager very much. And what you're going to do is you're going to take the program and you're going to be grateful. You don't want to refuse it, because if you refuse it, then that can affect you getting future earned time credits, which could affect you getting early release. And you don't want to do that. I mean, you want to keep the case manager as a friend. You don't want to alienate them and cause yourself to spend more time in prison. You don't want to do that. And so these examples is what I've learned from others. You want to take these classes and you want to document these classes. How are you going to do that? Recommendation is that Amazon, and if in fact you have not surrendered or gone into prison, research on Amazon for journals, logbooks, something has line pages, but there has to be wording on each of the pages. They can be watermarks on each of the pages, but it can be religious, sports, astrology, quotes from historic leaders or quotes from people in history. There has to be something on each page. Otherwise, they won't let blank pages in. And then you need to put the day, date, time, teacher of each class every day that you took that class. And you need to put what you learned, the teacher that taught that class on that day, the time of day, the date, what you learned, and what your takeaway was from that class. And you need to do it for each day that you took the class, and you need to log it. And that's important. And there needs to be a takeaway from that. And that is a big deal. And the habit has got to be something similar to, why do we purchase health insurance, auto insurance, life insurance? You'd hope you don't need it until you do. And this requires building a new habit. So building a new habit takes a skill that's repeated every day. And so I have in the list of books on my website, one of the books is called The Power of Habit. And it's a good book. If you choose to read it first, it's good, but you need to develop the habit. And so why do you need to write all this stuff down? Because it seems to be a nuisance. And to start with, it probably is, but after you begin to develop this habit, it's not. And I'll give you two reasons. The first is that what happens if you decide not to do it? And maybe you make it like a couple little notes. You start doing that and don't do anything. And then several months later, you're meeting with your case manager and they tell you that, you know, today is April 28th. And let's say you're meeting with your case manager, I don't know, in June, July, August of 2020. This is April 28th, 2023. So let's say you're meeting with your case manager in August of 2023. And your case manager says, they say, I'm noticing here that in April, you didn't show up at that class. What are you going to do? What do you do if 6 months later, after you take a class, you have no record or anything? What can you do? And so you'll notice that if you go to the website, but there is an article that I published and it's on the website, and it will be, I think, in a LinkedIn article at some point. But there's a legal case out there where this person thought that they had, 1 year's worth of earned time credits. And when it went before the court, the BOP proved he only had 75 days. The problem is that the BOP had records. The person did not, or did not have records as detailed as the BOP. And so if you're, the only way that you can prove that you were doing what you do every day is by documenting it and logging it. And so that's a big deal. I know that, ever since I entered practice, every time I send out an email to someone, every time I copy myself. If the email system doesn't do it for me to archive it, I copy it and just create a file within my system. So I have a record of everything that goes out. And I don't know that I consider this any different. So you're going to keep this running journal of who taught the class and the comments, what you thought about the class, takeaways maybe for something that you could, life lessons learned, etc. And then at the end of the class, in your journal notes, you want to go ahead and put just a brief thank you note that you appreciate their case manager, whatever their name is, referring you to that class. And you're going to notice that your journal, this little booklet, is going to increase. And then what happens is that as you as the time draws near for your meeting with your case manager, you just go to the copy machine, copy those pages, and then you take it to the case manager so they can read it. And they will add it to your file and say thank you. And they'll give you work programs or however it's being done at your particular facility. And then up each subsequent meeting, you bring not everything, just the whatever's updated since the previous meeting. Then I'll say that you probably also should get in the habit of reading find something else that you're interested in. And the only way I can share that with you is that start reading nonfiction books. And the only way to do that, and again, this is, things that I learned from others, because I did not do this when I was there. I was, I was fixated on getting my license back and not knowing how to do it. And I really had I had no baseline to work with. And I think this is a much better baseline because I wasn't prepared, is that start before, if this is before you are, before you're getting to your pre-sentence interview or before you have, entered prison, is to create a list of books, a smattering of books of things that you may be interested in, and spread out, depending how quickly you read, and maybe 2 books to come to you every 2 to 3 weeks, and spread out if you're going to be if it's a 16th month or a 30 month, however long your sentence is, That's how many months worth of, that's how you should have your list put together and then spread it among family and friends so that, no one person is responsible for everything. And then as you get the books, then start the same thing every day, read day, date, time, author, and a takeaway. And these should be nonfiction books, and they can be, you know, from, on history, philosophy, art, science, really on any topic. And if there's other topics that interest you, and then takeaways that, if there are takeaways that possibly you can use for after your release. When you are if you have interest, and I'm looking here, you also include biographies of famous history, science. And you may have an interest in painting, in drawing, in arts. Maybe you like to read, and maybe you want to draw or paint. I don't know what they'll let you do there, but you want to get ideas, you can go to my website, and there's a page at the bottom. I think it's the third tab in, and at the bottom of the page where I list books by business, by life skills, and I forget, by history maybe. And you can, read by just a variety of different topics until you find something that interests you. But this is just a starting point. I don't want you to waste your time. The time in prison is temporary. Eventually, you're going to be released. So spending your time watching TV or playing ball the time, I'm not telling you not to watch television. I'm not telling you not to play sports, but spend a majority of your time trying to develop another habit or something constructive to do, because eventually you will be going home. And you need to begin to planning for that early, because I did not. I planned for one thing, which was going into my appealing the indictment, which was not the brightest thing in the world. Let's say you've been famously successful, in the multi-million-dollar business. You got a degree, experience. Okay, well then chances are I don't have to go through with you. I don't have to explain to you the benefits of documenting what you're doing and logging what you're doing and writing everything down and reading, because you're probably doing that every day anyway. So maybe share some of what you learned with the other persons who are in prison with you. So create a course and create this curriculum that you feel would be of interest to those who are there with you. Or maybe just talk to the other persons that are around you and see if there's something they'd be interested in. And organize classes that maybe would meet twice a week, 3 times a week for several months. Run the idea by the case manager and unit team. And guess what? If they like it, let them take the credit. They'll see, it'll help them look good to their supervisors. And in the long run, and then you're playing the long game, it'll help you look better too. Now, mind you, you should have, a period of time there, but yeah, do that. And it will make your reentry plan look better. And for sure, your unit team and case managers will be proud having you as part of their, under their purview. While you're writing and documenting, you should also log every conversation you have with every BOP staff member, every case manager, every unit team. Again, it should be by date, day, topic, and who you spoke through. It could be an innocent conversation that you had, but you're never going to know until the day that you need it. And so if someone asked you to do something and it was and it was several months back and you forgot, the exact, day, date, and topic, guess what? You're out of luck. And so this is a habit, it's insurance. You know, when you're at home insurance, as I said, it's life, health, auto. Here, your insurance is going to be you, the stroke of a pen and a piece of paper. Next, and again, this is all to, while it's First Step Act and it's you working towards getting your way home, this is all going to be going into building your reentry relief plan. In July of 2023, the Biden administration has set up the Second Chance Pell Education grants to start. And so these grants will be available, but there's a list of colleges and universities, and they will be available only, there's only certain university and colleges that will have them. And so I will be able to, actually at the end of this, maybe I can show them to you. I will try and pull all that up at the end of this YouTube. Next, in order to be able to participate with the First Step Back programs, if through your court proceedings, you have a financial penalty, you are going to have to, it can be restitution. If you still have a penalty when you go into prison, even if the judge says that you do not have to pay the penalty, and you don't have to pay anything until you get out from under the BOP. Once you get into the Federal Bureau of Prisons, remember you're going into a bureaucracy where they're taking a round object and they're fitting it into a round hole. They're not taking a round object and putting it into a square hole. They have boxes that need to be checked. And so Department of Justice has strongly been pushing for the financial responsibility program, which is something that they strongly encourage everyone to participate in, which means that if you are taking in into your commissary account $1,000, several $1,000s a month, be willing to offer a couple $100s a month and offer to pay that amount a month into your financial responsibility plan, because that will make you look very good to your case managers, and it'll let you shine like a star. They will feel like they're doing their job. If you are taking in a couple $100s a month and there's really not much money, offer to pay $25 a month or $25 a quarter, whatever you and your case manager can think that's fair. But by all means, do not use your commissary account as a bank, because the Department of Justice has had in the press multiple times that they are looking to, they would love the ability for the law to become active where they can come in and take 75% of whatever is in someone else's commissary account. And you just do not want that to happen. And so this is why we're strongly recommending do not keep $1,000 or over $1,000 in your commissary account unless you have worked out with your case manager that you can give them a couple $100s a month. Continuing, and these recommendations are going through. And lastly, we're going to go through all of this is for you to want to be able to, as you get close to when you feel you should be released to halfway house or to home confinement. I initially mentioned that there's Second Chance Act, which would allow the case managers, because it's not done by your lawyer, it's done by the staff at the Bureau of Prisons, which would be your case manager and your unit team saying to the warden that this person has really done a great job. They deserve to go early. And so being able to fit into that program, well, then there's certain things, that needs to be, there's certain things that you need to have done. And so there is John Gustin, a retired BOP administrator of the Residential Reentry Management Program, was quoted in multiple interviews as stressing the following. So if you don't have a reentry release plan, remember, as I said, that you want to have this before you get to your pre-sentence interview. If you don't have it as woven into your pre-sentence report, why should a case manager recommend you for the Second Chance Act to let you get out earlier? If you don't appear to have everything lined up where you care about your future, why should they, as a stakeholder, care about your future more than you do? If there's no reentry or release plan at all, now that you've been in prison where you're not, logging in everything and reading the books and going to the classes, staying out of trouble, not using other people's cell phones, why should a case manager recommend you to the residential reentry managers at halfway houses? So why is that a big deal? It's a big deal because the residential reentry managers, they are in charge of halfway houses because there are more people that are trying to get into halfway houses, but there's not enough beds for all of the persons that are looking to get released to those beds. So why should a residential reentry matter look at someone who, if they're looking at two candidates, one who has a great reentry release plan, they've done everything in prison that they had to, they've done everything through their pre-sentence report, and someone else who is not, who are they going to, take into their halfway house? Because the case managers, they have the residential reentry managers, they have supervisors too of all the halfway houses. And so they need to bring in people who are going to successfully re-enter back into their communities. They don't want to bring people in that may get in trouble and have to be sent back into prison. They may wind up being fine and re-enter their communities okay. But if they have to choose between someone who has a great reentry plan and someone who does not, they may, unfortunately, lean on the person who appears to have a great reentry plan. And so all of this folds neatly into the needs of having this great reentry plan. And lastly, as you near that end of your stay in the BOP, drafting that last part of the reentry plan has a significant component. And there you can look to the National Institute of Corrections manual. But rather than getting into detail, I'll also pull that up online if I can at the very end. But it gives you specifics. In other words, they go into where are you going to stay? Do you know where you're going to live? Is there a challenge with the person that's there? Are you going to have a car, not a car? Do you have a job? Are you going to look for a job? It goes through the specific things of, what are you going to, do? And then you answer that. And all of these questions are going to be right there for your case manager to see and for your residential reentry manager to see. So let me go back to, let me start with the most recent. Let me see if I can share this at the, show this at the very beginning. Let's see here. Okay. Let's see. So I am going to pull. Let's take this and move that all the way down there. And let's see if I can share this screen. And move this here, move that there. And sorry for the inconvenience. So the assessment questions, if I did this correct, let's see what happens. No, here they are. Oh no. Not exactly where I wanted to be. Nope.
Included into your pre-sentence,
No,
ready for your pre-sentence interview. Your re-entry plan.
Not where I wanted to be. So let's try something else. Oh, that's better. There we go. Much better. Okay. So let's move this over a little bit. So it's going to ask you, Social Security card will tell you what you need to pull together to get this. Housing, where are you going to be? You're going to list, plan the, where are you going to live? Who do you know who lives there? You can do 3 different choices. It's going to ask you transportation, how you're going to, specific questions so that, where you're going to need to go, how much you're going to spend for housing, food, transportation. It's going to talk to you about a budget, how much you have in your inmate account, if you have any outstanding savings, employment, about a little couple questions about employment, where of your interests, what do your your current knowledge skills are, 3 jobs that you think that you would work well at. So, all of these are good specific questions that you can begin to weave into the end of your release plan. And let me see what else I can do as far as the colleges. And if you're interested in getting a college education through this Pell Grant program, you have your GED already. Well, then for a list of the participating programs, you can go right here on the website. Although it'll be on my website, this is through another article that I have coming out on LinkedIn. And so it's a list of all the different universities, but you can come to this also through my website. Then let's see here, Pell Grant. Let's see what else did I have in here. Books. This is where you'll be able to see. Should take you to, all right, so shorten the time in prison. So if we come all the way here to the bottom of the website, way to the bottom. Let's see if I can do this to where I can see it. And you shall see. All right. So softback books you get from Amazon. You can come from home too, but from Amazon is better. These are all just different books. Think and Grow Rich is an old one. The Power of Habit is the one I discussed. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that is, an oldie. 3 Laws of Performance is an excellent book. There's autobiographies that are great. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. There's another one that is part of the First Step Act, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Well, That's one that some people haven't yet learned, but I've also divided them into business categories, business, life skills, and history, where you can go online and see, current lists of, the best ones that are currently as of, April of 2023 that are good ones where people have reviewed them. Let's see what else I have in here. The legal case. You can read this one on your own. I guess you can also get to this through the website. This is a LinkedIn article link that will come out at some point soon. But the article is here, and it says that the petitioner thought they owned 365 days of credits. The BOP said they owned 75 days. And so you can Google it, I'm sure, by that name right there, and then you can read the entire discussion of the article or of the case. Let's see, what else was I discussing? Okay, this is another you can see through the website, but these are hard-coded, which means that the really doesn't change. This is an example of mail. And you can see that, I mean, it's just, if you're under 60, the younger you are, the worse it looks. But it goes through violent offense pattern, criminal history points. This is all from your current charge. You'll be able to figure that. History of escapes where you're not in prison. So some of this applies if you've already been in prison. Education score, well, if it depends. If you got your GED, then you're good. If not, then the numbers begin to go up. Let's see if I can pull out something else that could be helpful. This is a program statement that reviews the First Step Act, which you can print up for yourself at a later time. But that's pretty much it. I hope that you have found this helpful. I appreciate you taking the time to listen. I realize it's been a pretty long video, audio, YouTube. And if you choose to engage my services, the consults are no charge. Please, though, try and engage someone. Do not go into this blindly. This is your future. And I appreciate you taking the time to listen. Have a good day and stay safe.